Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance tonight at the Corporate Performance Overview and Scrutiny Panel, 23rd of July 2026, in the Council Chamber at Marlborough District Council. I'm Councillor Jonathan Bateman from the Misterton Ward, and I'm chairing this meeting tonight. If I could just point out, the meeting is recorded and live streamed. We've just been told about the fact that we're not using desk lights, so the cameras are on. So, as Sarah pointed out, any side conversations will get picked up, so just be careful if you want to say anything. Mobile phones, as usual, as long as they're on silent or switched off, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. We all know where the fire exits are, but just in case, either door, out. If there is a fire, we're not expecting a test fire alarm, so if it does go off, there is something going on. And the meeting point's at the top end of Mill Hill Car Park. I'd just like to go around the table and ask you to introduce yourselves for the benefit of any members of the public watching the recording tonight. So if I start with Peter, if you'd just like to introduce yourselves one at a time, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Peter James, representing Little Bowden Ward, Market Harbour and Town.
I'm Councillor Neil Bannister. I represent the Dunton Ward.
Yeah, Councillor Phil King, Deputy Leader responsible for finance and assets.
Sarah Hamilton, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Mason, Director of Resources and Section 151 Officer.
Roger Quelks, Head of Community Partnerships. Becky Nixon, Community Engagement Manager.
And the Borough of Thurngin Houghton Ward.
Councillor Peter Scott, Glen Ward. Councillor Clive Grafton, Sutton and Cranthorpe, Broadlandsford.
Councillor Joe Asher, the Benham Ward.
Lovely. Thanks very much, everybody. We've also got David Atkinson, Director of Planning and Regeneration online, who will maybe need to speak early. Do you want to introduce yourself, David?
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Yeah, good evening, everyone. David Atkinson, Director of Planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Just for everybody's information, Finance Portfolio Holder Councillor King is here. He was due to be considered under any urgent business, but if everyone's in agreement, change the order of agenda so that Councillor King can be considered after item 3, which is the draft minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any objections to that change of order?
No.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. In that case, we will go on. So, on to the agenda itself. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, Sarah? No. No, I've had anything on. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of members' interests. Anybody have anything to declare prior to the meeting? Fantastic.
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Clive.
Just Parish Councillor at Broadlandsford Parish Council, and we are going to be submitting an application under the leader grant. Okay.
Thank you. We want to item 3, that's the draft minutes of the corporate performance overview and the scrutiny panel on the 19th of March this year. Anybody that was there at that meeting that's here tonight, would they like to propose those to be accurate? Councillor Scott, thank you. Do I have a seconder for those minutes? Councillor Borrell, lovely, thank you very much. Everybody in agreement? Fantastic. I wasn't there, but they're all good. And we'll jump ahead then and bring item 9, which is the finance portfolio holder update from Councillor King, who would like to present his update, and then I'll open it up to the panel for any questions or comments. Councillor King, thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. So I'm not going to read this, but keep this as succinct as possible. A couple of things just want to mention. So first of all, there is an error about assets. All bullet point down says so now, but this just also say that is relating to temporary business. Just needs to do with the temporary accommodation. But the only thing I really want to add, and perhaps make a bit more of a thing about, is the first item under finance. So just to, I mean, there was an email, I think there has been an email not sure if it's gone round to all the councillors or not, but there was an email last week from Sean, the head of finance, to say that the remedial activities that are going on with these accounts and the bank. Yeah, that's now been completed, the schedule, I think by day. And the amounts now considered to be trivial. They might sound a lot money still, but they're very trivial amounts for the auditors, and that's good news. And it means that things have been able to move forward, and they can get on with the 26, yeah, stuff. Which is really important. So it's good. So we've got a lot of work going on there. And so just wanted to make that note. Thanks to Sean and all the staff that are involved with that. So but I'll be to answer any questions about anything that's in this or anything else. I mean, there's a lot in the agenda about finance there.
Thank you. Councillor Grattan, thank you.
So just inquisitive about assets, the final point, the two offices now vacant. Do we know why they're vacant? Are these businesses that have relocated or are business failures or what?
Yeah, fine.
Yep.
You know the details.
Yeah, they're just relocated. There's no specific reason, but they're just a natural part of the evolution of the business.
Chairman,
Pardon?
the chairman.
Well, yeah, I don't like to use my phrasing. Evolution.
Do we know if there's anybody waiting to come in, any further kind of waiting list? Do we know?
Yeah, there's a waiting list. One of them, I think, there was one company we're looking around next week, and there's somebody else who's got an active interest as well. So, but they do really well as two business sectors. It is surprising, amazing, really, that they do so well.
Go into the data, then we've got approximately 5,000 businesses that are classed as micro businesses. So they're essentially, less than 10 employees. And quite often they're people who are, working at home, or they've got a little office at home or in the garden or whatever. And they got to a point where they think, I need to upscale this. So they come to the innovation centre and they make that step. And then you've got people who move away from the innovation centre because it's too much. They can't manage that it's not what they want to do, and they step away. So there's always a turnover of people. Sometimes it's a bit quicker than others. So there is a waiting list, I believe, of probably half a dozen businesses, something like that, currently for the innovation centre.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I'd be more interested if they were business failures, because that would be a negative thing, but it's not that case. And so I think it's good news. And as you say, I've been involved in small businesses in the past, and that, as you said, there's a growth curve. I'd be curious, and I'll take it offline with you regarding the typical turnover time, gestation period of these businesses.
I'm pretty sure they didn't give you that information.
I'll take that. I don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Bannister?
Just following up the point, Councillor Grafton raised on the centre. I welcome very much the high occupancy rate, but I was wondering whether the enterprises in both sectors centric or really to look at enterprises from beyond Minor Harbour and around the district.
I can answer that. So they obviously the actual business principles, they come from a wide area. Many of them are in the Harbour district, all 10 Harbour. Some of them, a bit further afield maybe. But I mean, they're not the sort of units which you'd get businesses transferring from one part of the country to another. They're generally, these innovation centres by very nature was a startup. It was aimed at start because it's what it is. Or businesses are looking to accelerate out of being at home and being at home. And the enterprise centre is to those that have got to a point where they need that extra space they still want the security of an umbrella wrap around on the local property. Yeah, so the enterprise centre is more of a long-term home for business that maybe reach their kind of optimal size, but they're restricted by size at the innovation centres. The number of units with large units innovation centres is quite restricted. So with bigger units, you have to go to the enterprise centre. But we reach that level. We have got businesses that have moved in there from other sites in the locality, other places in the district, because they thought it was a more more work, working from it's a very high standard, it's making energy efficiency and all the rest of it. So I think it's green excellent. So that's the highest standard I think it can get to. I used to put a pre-made standard or something. But I think it's green excellent. Whatever it is, it's very high for the energy efficiency. And of course, that's really important for lots of businesses now when they're trying to get contracts with people who are trying to meet all the various, legislative requirements. I can't really answer your specific question. To be honest, apart from that, so it's a very much broad thing.
I think you've given an indication. There are some startups and enterprises that are beyond the town market harbour, and this is a district asset, and obviously keen to ensure that all individuals that are thinking of starting up and moving on there to something more permanent, know about things that hit at the enterprise centre and are able to make use of it when vacancies do arise.
Yeah, I mean, you've got virtual businesses that are maybe grew on virtual office there as well. Hot desk, and they've got their office registered, they use it for their registered office and all of that. So we've got, and people can rent out space there for meetings. They don't have to be based in the buildings to use the space. They can rent, meeting rooms or conference rooms and things to have meetings. And people do that as well. People who work from home, if they want to have a meeting with colleagues, they arrange. They quite often have it in one small room, so that's quite a regular thing.
Any other questions for Councillor King on that update? Okay. Like that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll move on the agenda then. Vote to item 4, page 9 of your pack. This is the ward member community grants report, and I would ask Becky, our community engagement manager, to present the report, and then we'll run through the recommendations and open it up to discussion afterwards. Becky, all yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll just kind of summarise the main bits, and I think where might be some differences, slight differences from previous grants, and then obviously just ask me anything else. So this came out of the budget amendment in February. It established 1.9 million ward member community grants fund, which is basically £35 per councillor to allocate. The requirement was it should be as flexible and responsive as possible to local needs. It's a capital and revenue grant that recognises that different geographies have different needs, and sometimes kind of a mixture of both types of funding are needed. So I think you've all had experience previously of the ward member grant. The criteria to this are quite similar. There were some things that we put in place from the learning from the first year of it. So we have set kind of indicative milestones, for example, to make sure that we don't end up with just a lot of payments that we need to make at the end to manage kind of capacity. We've got a lot of learning. We've thought through, obviously, in terms of the grant, there's a three-way relationship potentially between the councillor, the applicant and us in terms of advising people what's eligible and what's not eligible. And obviously, whilst we want to be as flexible as possible, we obviously need to make sure that we're meeting audit requirements and we're making sure all the due diligence is done for our benefit and your individual benefit as well. So we are looking at a minimum grant of £500 this time, because we recognise that a lot of you do want to support very small community projects. But at the same time, within the existing staff capacity we obviously need to manage demand. And so we're suggesting or recommending probably around about 5 grants per councillor will be about what we can manage in terms of our capacity in my team, but also finance and legal and some of those other things that kind of need to be done. We have absolutely no idea kind of how this is going to turn out, and we do want this to be flexible, and we do recognise that particularly perhaps that in some wards there's more of a need for smaller projects than others. Some of you will have projects ready to go, which is great. Some of you might want a little bit of support, and certainly my team can help in terms of identifying what's out there, what the need is. We've obviously had a lot of communication with groups over the past 2 years. We think we've built really good relationships. So, you know, hopefully we can work with you to build on what's there, what you know and what we know to get this grant out. The other things I will just draw attention to. So the purpose is the same as previous community grants. The eligible projects are pretty much the same. So standard around exclusions around things like not things that are not party political, you know, money that's already been spent. We won't fund anything that duplicates statutory services, but for example, with the ward member grant, we did have some things like schools apply where they could demonstrate that it wasn't statutory and there was a wider need that kind of benefited the community. The other thing that I'll draw attention to with the previous grant, there were some issues in terms of timescales and getting permissions within the council for projects such as planning, such as leases, effectively environmental team. And so there may be some things that we do need to work with you on in terms of whether they're feasible to fund in terms of timescale and the capacity of the council to deliver other things. So we're suggesting there's a rolling application process, and we work with you up to November to submit initial suggestions. Some of those might be great, we may be able to pay fairly quickly. Others may need a little bit of work. We can advise you, we can advise the groups. We're suggesting by the end of February, at least 50% of the projects are in the pipeline. And then so we don't end up with a massive underspend at the end of it, that by end of May, all the funding is committed. And after that, if there's no clear intention for spend of that money, that it's reported to the leader, who can then make a decision around potential reallocation. Talked about minimum grant, talked about, so it can be, so as previously, it can be allocated in one grant or split between different projects. You can merge allocations potentially. If a project's based in the ward and or serves residents of the ward, the councillor may support it in a way they see fit, subject to meeting other criteria, because we recognise that services and assets and things don't really operate necessarily according to ward boundaries. So there may be a village hall in one area that actually is across the ward boundary, but you know that a lot of the residents in your ward do use that. So we want some flexibility around that. And yeah, so we'd really like to just work with you kind of positively, really, to just meet the need that's out there. So I think they're the main issues, and they're perhaps the main differences from the previous ward member grants.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Thank you very much. So just before we go open up to the panel, the recommendations are that this panel is actually to review the report and the proposed grant criteria as given at Appendix A, which is on page 14 onwards, and to provide feedback for consideration by Cabinet on Monday to enable finalisation and delivery of the scheme. So they're the two recommendations. So this is going, we're referring back to Cabinet, not to Council at this time, just to make that clear. So I'm happy to open up the discussion to any panel members who want any questions for Becky or comments or any other comments on the report. Councillor Asher.
Yeah, obviously I'm really supportive of the community grants. I think they've done some great work over the last couple of years. But I'm wondering what work's been done around looking at what the take-up was like in the different areas, and to see if the allocation the last 2 years has been about right, or if actually it should have been put more into some villages, or has it been about right? Because the paperwork that I've looked at, it's quite clear the small villages, the little villages and parish meetings haven't taken up their funding for year 2. So it is a bit worrying that they're going to get more money, or potentially more money, that they may not be able to spend. I have my own ideas of why they potentially haven't been able to apply for them, or don't apply for them, which I could go into. I think a lot of parishes haven't got the skill set all the time to do this, because they're just little parish meetings. I also think a lot of the smaller parishes haven't got the assets that the town have got and the bigger villages have got to look after, and so they don't have the need to have this kind of money. So it is a bit, like, I do wonder what work has gone in to evaluate what we've learned from the past. So I'd be interested to hear that. The minimum grant, £100. I'm a bit like, I know you're sort of recommending that each council only does 5 awards. But if you only have the £500, if you get lots of people who with the £500, we're going to end up bogged down with realising all with so much paperwork. And in a way, councillors as well, you know, it's not just your time, as well, our time. We're going to get a lot of people coming to us for smaller grants, and end up in a bit of a, almost in a full-time job. So I would rather see that raised to maybe 1,000. And I know you touched on the underspend. Did you say that there's no plan for the underspend yet, if there is any underspend, which I guess there will be?
So, to take your questions hopefully in order. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a paper coming later in terms of rural grants and increased funding to rural areas. So I think in that we've raised exactly the same sort of issues. I think that you have, that we recognise that there is a need for, and actually we've been doing it over the past couple of weeks, actually going to some of these villages and speaking to people. And when we speak to people, we find people who do actually have projects. Actually, in some ways, I think having larger amounts might help a little bit, because if you've got so we've seen some very kind of old, dilapidated village hall that needs more than £5,000. So £5,000 isn't going to help, but more money than £5,000 would help. So we do think it's going to need a lot more support of people. We know there are some parishes that don't have assets. We know there are some parishes that have assets, but or there are some assets in the parish, but there isn't a bank account that can actually, you know, take any funding. So we know there are some of those issues, but we do also know that if they did have extra support, and it may be capacity, and it may be issues where there's conflict as well. So I think that's something that stopped spending. So I think we're aware of some of those reasons. And obviously we would like, now we've built the relationships with the parishes, we've got more knowledge, we've got more suggestions about projects potentially, and so I think we can be much more proactive. On the issue of the smaller grants, I mean, yes, it may be. So we've worked it out on the basis of how many grants the team has done previously. Now, this scheme is quite different, but it can create quite a lot of extra work in terms of liaising between councillors and applicants as well. Some areas have been brilliant and it's been fairly straightforward, but in some there's been a lot of backwards and forwards. And of course, we are trying to put processes in place to stop those happening, and we're more than happy to have feedback about any of that. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave that the kind of minimum grant thing for the people really to consider. And there was one more thing, I think, I can't remember what it was now.
What happens to the
underspend? Yeah, I mean, the idea around the underspend is that by the end of the 9 months or whatever it is, If there is underspend, we might have ideas. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a massive amount of change. We know there's change. We know the community will want to be involved in the change in terms of LGR. There could be all sorts of projects, I think, at that stage that could be decided. It could be put into a bigger pot for a larger project. It could be a series of smaller projects, potentially, you know, and moving the money across different areas. I think at the time, unless anyone wants to suggest something else, at that point in time, a decision will be made on what to do with the underspend, is what we've got in the paper at the moment. But
Yeah.
if there's any other suggestions, obviously, then that can be considered.
Yeah, can I just ask one more thing? Obviously before, the parishes and community groups applied directly.
Yes.
Will the parishes be consulted like as we get consulted as ward members? And the parishes obviously oversaw everything normally with the old grants. Will the parishes be consulted, or will a lot of it just go over their head?
That isn't what's proposed in the paper.
Yeah, that does worry me a little bit. I thought, I know what everybody else thinks, but yeah.
Okay. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. You made loads of notes, but I'll sit out a bit first because I think some like it. But just as a starter, really, like Councillor Ash has just mentioned it, I think there's potential for a huge amount of work in amendments for elected members. Comes out in here. And also, I think to get this off to a good start, then there should be an open day or there should be events to do this. I think there needs to be an application. If as members we are approached, as guests we will be, or officers approached, that we need to produce a pack of information so the communication is properly there. I think that's very important. Just mention one other at the moment, and that is, can we cross? I mean, that's not the right term, but can deals be done between members in other wards? And that's okay, is it? I think there's some comment in here about that we put funding together. It could be within the ward or it could be across wards anywhere in the district to deliver a project, and that presumably that would be acceptable, yeah?
Yes, I think so. There's two kind of answers to that. One is if it benefits residents in your ward, you can combine with another councillor whose residents have benefited. If you decide you're not going to spend the money, you can allocate it back, and then that would be an internal council process, a staff process internally is proposed in there at the moment. Obviously, to stop money going. To stop like those conversations kind of happening behind closed doors, I guess. So we'd have to have a formal process. If you wanted to say, I'm not going to spend this, I want to give my money back. But if it's something that benefits your ward, so if all the Market Harbour councillors, for example, wanted to get together and do something that benefited Market Harbour as a whole, then that would be fine.
Or if it benefited the district as a whole, maybe some sort
Yeah,
of community
as long
function.
as you can demonstrate that it does benefit
But it
some
could go
residents
beyond
in your ward.
the town or different villages.
Yeah, so what's proposed is obviously you can, it's not proposed that you could say, I want this project over in Bitterswell that only benefits Bitterswell residents, we say Bitterswell because we went there today. But yeah, if it was a district-wide thing, then at the moment, the way it's written, you could combine as long as it benefited some residents in your ward.
Thank you. A few things just to emphasise, sort of plan would be very useful, and it would keep us to a standard as well. We'd all be operating in the same way.
Yeah, so we've done that. Yeah.
If a group was to approach us, then we can give them a pack, we can assist them and support them. And I think we need to be operating with some basic standard really.
Yeah, so we've done that. So there'll be a councillor pack and there'll be an applicant pack. We tend to go out and do grant surgeries in various places. We do online kind of grant surgeries, but also I think we were suggesting that we did an introductory meeting with councillors as well, whether that's face to face or online, to introduce you to answer your questions. We can do individual surgeries as well, so we can be around maybe meetings if people want to book appointments with us to talk through things. So we can do a whole range of things if you just want to get in touch with the team around suggestions, but we will do a whole launch as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, I think Rachel just wants to come back on something you said there, Peter.
Could I councillors refer to page 17, item 1.14, around the allocation of grants? We can develop grants, but there is, depending on the sign-off process, the decisions that need to be made is a maximum of 50, which is written in the report. So we can merge grants, but it's going to prepare for the sign-off process.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Preston.
Thank you very much. I participated in this last time we came around, and I would say it was a success in wards that I'm familiar with, and very welcome. I wouldn't like to see a change in the minimum grant because there are smaller groups which would comfortably fit in that number. And I'm thinking of small things like help for small groups of the elderly, luncheon clubs, that type of thing. And that fits very neatly into there. And I don't think it causes a significant amount of additional work because things up to the council to manage the pot, as it were. And I think we managed it quite well, actually. I believe the slight increase is welcome. And I think that is good. And the flexibility to be maintained within this, I think, is something we should be looking forward to. So, in principle, across for schedules, I think it's continuation of a good scheme. I have one question on page 16 regarding transfers. We talked about the funding fully committed by name. Do we have any indication of any restriction or rules regarding spend by? If I commit to spend
Oh, I see.
in May, but I say I'm not going to spend it until December.
So I know that that's what's climate change. Yeah, so what we say in current grant things is we would generally expect spend within a year. We can be flexible if there are unforeseen circumstances.
That's fine. Just probably got a guideline, a principle to work on
Yeah.
in the plan. That's fine.
However, I would advise, Chair, you are cognizant of local government review. Okay, and if you decide to start merging grants and stuff and end up with big amounts, that there may be some restrictions on that. So my real advice is get it spent this calendar year rather than thinking about financial years. Because once you get past the end of March, things might get interested. And of course, promises are made to said organisations. And if the big axe comes down now, me, I think we'll do a workaround around it, but I can't make you any promises. But you just need to be cognizant that there is that risk now, that there is a drop down.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I was really helpful, colleagues' comments. Just made the point though that this isn't money for per se for parish council or to decide where the money gets spent. That's the issue that we had with the previous scheme, in that in some localities, parish councils acted as gatekeepers and only gave it to their pet projects and wouldn't let anyone else get dabs on it. And that was a real problem in some parishes, which we couldn't overcome because the money was given to parish councils. So that was problem number one. Second problem before was the minimum bid was £1,000. And as my colleague, Councillor Grafton Reader said, we had issues where people wanted less than that, but they couldn't apply. So then we had to find a creative way of doing that. And it ticked all the boxes, but it just made it more complicated and a bit more long-winded. So I think this is really exciting because it gives power to elected members. We're all being elected by residents in our area. It gives us the power. It gives us the decision-making to an extent. And, we're the closest to the ground. And, residents and groups come to us fairly often saying, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Etc. etc. So I'm not worried about that at all. I think it's really, we should embrace that because there are groups and just picking up the point I think Councillor Action made about smaller parishes. Well, that's the problem. The problem was, Becky's mentioned it, the money wasn't enough for them to actually do anything. And they do have assets. They may not be assets you're familiar with, but they certainly exist. And the problem is a lot of them are very, they're quite old and they need a lot of money spending on. The problem is that as the population of the district has grown, people have moved out from Market Harbour or that's all over Astley, and they've moved out into those very small hamlets and villages. And actually what we're seeing is population growth because of the decisions of the planning inspectors and amongst others to allow growth in smaller rural villages. And of course that doesn't come with section 106, so there's no money to actually invest in upgrading infrastructure, particularly village halls or meeting rooms, things like that. So this hopefully goes some way to addressing that, and it gives members the ability to fund projects that are really in need. And I think that's a really, really exciting thing. And should embrace it as much as we can. Admit £500 limit. I am a little nervous about that because I think we could end up with a lot. But I think the majority of elected councillors, or elected councillors, I'd say that, I'll just bear that all, are very sensible people, I'm sure, and will all understand that we don't want to give out why many it is 17,500, no, 30, it's a lot anyway. 70 £500 grants in the division because that's a full-time job for the council, let alone the staff. And we do have a number of staff who work on grants, but clearly they've got other grants to administer as well at the same time. So I think we're all cognizant of that. And I take your point, Councillor James. I mean, we'll have communications, I'm sure, as what Becky's outlined will be, the way forward, as we did before with the previous member grants. So it is for Cabinet on Monday, I think, to sort of decide or something about the grant scheme, the actual details of this. And obviously the comments we've all made will be taken into consideration. But I haven't heard anything at the moment that is suggesting we do anything different to what's in the criteria here at the moment. Not a compelling case anyway.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bannister, then Councillor Scott. Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you, Chairman. Very much welcome this scheme. I don't think the council should be shy about getting involved in the area that they represent. I think it is going to be very popular. I would keep the minimum grant at £500 because in my experience with my ward, I've got 7 villages, some larger than others, and the smaller villages may struggle to find something to spend to reach minimum, say, threshold of 1,000, but they may well easily find something just above £500 to spend money on. Already, I know that in my ward, I've had discussions with some parishes about speed cameras, bus shelters, and the like. The money will certainly be welcomed by the parishes, but as I say, I've got 7 villages. I wouldn't like to be stuck with a maximum of only doing 5 awards out of the 7 villages or parishes. I appreciate it is just a recommendation, but I wouldn't like to say to 2 of my parishes, sorry, I'm only allowed to do 5 grants. So there obviously has to be some flexibility to recognise the more rural wards. There may well be more than 5 applications being made during the council of the year.
Yeah, I've got nods from the officers, so I think that's
Yeah.
pretty much okay. If you've got multiple villages, then clearly there's more than 5. Thank you, Councillor Bannister. Councillor Scott.
Last to the chair and to Rachel. The In terms of parish councils, what part have they played, if any, apart from being a recipient of this of a grant like this? Would they play? In the past, in my particular parish, they've been asked to communicate with the actual organisations that exist within the parish, and there's been the argument: is it our job to do that, or should the ward member be doing it? What do you feel on that?
Chair. I mean, this grant is different to previous grants because down board members to decide where money would go. So previously, as Councillor King had mentioned, the grant did go to parish councils for them to actually look to see where the money went. So parish councils still play a very key role in their community. They can work with the council to ensure that groups are thought about. So I think they shouldn't be isolated. They can also apply for this grant. But what we're saying is it's the ward councillor who has the look to see where the grant goes, not the parish council.
Because I attended grants open day that you had in this one, and the people that were there were parish councillors in general. They were the chair and the vice chair. So now you're saying they're not particularly involved. How are we going to get to the scouts, to the Methodist Church, to the
Council's role, ward council's role. We are also going out. Becky's mentioned the team are out working with parishes. We have a long list of parishes that we've been visiting who have list of things they want. So I shall say to members, if you're looking to spend your money, you're not too sure, contact Becky and her team. They have got parishes and community groups who are looking for money. So again, we can help with that. But the idea being, as before, against Councillor King said, this enables other groups to have access to the funding, where in some locations, not every, in some locations, it was very difficult for the parish councils to actually allocate the funding. It did cause a lot of extra work for us. And some communities groups missed out on it for that reason. So this gives the opportunity for all community groups to have access to funding.
We appreciate it from the council. Sometimes it was difficult to get into some of the organisations.
Well, we can help you.
You know, trustees are not around, they're not available. You've got to find out who's the leadership in it. So it's actually communicating. It's quite difficult.
Becky, sorry, sorry. Just let Becky go.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, we are developing ward profiles, particularly focusing on some of the rural areas, the very rural areas. But if any councillor wants to kind of prioritise their area, so we're doing what organisations are out there, what people have told us about need. We'll send those to you. You can look at them. You can add what you know, which might be over and above what we know. So if you do need a bit of help, you know, just thinking who's in my district, what do we already know about them? Have they already had money? Who's had money? Who hasn't had money? We will do that and send that to each of you. That's a really good idea.
Well, I just want to come in.
Yeah, I mean, do remember it's the bolting together of two previous schemes. So previous 5K schemes, members. Community grant scheme was an application process from a member, right? We bolted it together, it's all members. And I will be policing this. Okay, so every application that come in, I will be making sure a ward member has sponsored it and it's in they want this to go to that organisation. I will be policing it. We get applications from any other organisation coldly, I won't be accepting it. It has to be by one of the ward members. It's their scheme, it's not another scheme. Okay.
So does that mean that the application form has to come from the ward member?
It's your scheme.
Solution.
So we'll have a process where you'll nominate, you'll decide what you want, you'll nominate your project, we'll have a look at it. We may look at it and say, this isn't eligible, or we've spoken to this applicant and we know that they haven't got a lease, or, you know, whatever it is, we'll do the due diligence, or or they didn't submit, they haven't submitted their bank account. They'll do a brief application to us as previously, just so that we can do that due diligence and we know the money's going where it's supposed to.
So they'll do the application form, but
yes,
it will be
and then
the ward member first.
Yeah, so you'll do a, this is what we want to support, we'll do the due diligence, we'll go back to you and we'll say, this is what we found, this is the project, do you give us your formal agreement? And then that's when it'll go ahead and contact him.
So what sort of detail would a ward member need to give you in the first instance? this is the person in contact, this is the
Yeah.
location, this is what they want.
Yeah.
Those three.
Yeah, I think that's basically about it, yeah.
Councillor,
And we'll give you a checklist as well for the applicants, you know, things like, have they got a lead, you know, do they have a bank account, just very basic. So that you can look at it and they can look at it and we're getting the applications once they're happy that they've got those basic things in place.
So really the ward member can sort of vet it before it gets to you, save you a bit of work.
Yeah,
I hope you would,
Yeah.
it's things
As long as
you
we
are.
know what we're supposed to
Yes.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
If you like, it was will do.
Yeah, if you get approached by, say, Village Hall who want to put an extension on, want some of your money, the first question is, you'll know, council, your planning application or pre-plan, because if that hasn't gone through, we're not in a position to do anything. So, you know, your knowledge, well, you know those issues, you know what you need to be considering. But if you don't, we can help you with those anything that you need.
Like the criteria is sort of roughly the same, that they have to have some sort of governance agreement for that organisation in 3 years of council. Constitution, yes.
Councillor Ashley, you wanted to come back then? I've got Councillor James, then I've got Councillor King.
Yeah, just a suggestion, so the £500, nearly, maybe we should put a suggestive cap on that, that we only allow 2 per ward member or something like that, because otherwise I think it's just going to be too many grants to me. So each ward member had just 2 per £500 minimum. So,
I'll
or
consider that at the end.
2 that are under 1,000 or something.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chairman. We've been around this point, but just to be absolutely clear, I just refer to point 1.8 in the report. So for all of these items, the applicant will provide a short report to the council, because the council has taken the decision here. So is that the case that we will receive, as councillors, we will receive a report from the officers?
yeah, so it'll be similar.
Would it be with a recommendation?
Yeah, so it'll be similar to the grants committee reports that we do, which we will basically say, you know, we've done the due diligence, we're happy, they meet the basic organisational criteria. This is the project, this is what we're going to do, this is the timescale. Are you now happy to report it? Obviously, if we find something amiss, then we'll come back to you, you know, it depends what stage we're at, but we'll come back to you and speak to you about that separately. So by the time you get to the report stage, we basically agreed the organisation is and the project is eligible, but we're happy with it, and then you will say, yes, that's fine, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor King and Councillor Glastonbury.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry. So just to answer a couple of points. So the thing you just said, Councillor, about restricting 500 to just do it at 2. We did discuss this previously in the sort of discussions about, you know, working this up. But the other side of the equation is you could have 3 or 4 projects that would require a relatively small amount of money. But then you could have a very large one that needs a lot of the money. So actually, it might be sensible to just leave it. What I also like to point out, and something that is the actual money it can be used for revenue as well as capital, whereas the previous schemes were all capital, which was one of the other factors that influenced the amount of money. So this is quite an important change.
It's very important, I agree.
It is, absolutely. And so this is quite different to what we had before. So I think that's another factor that colleagues need to be aware of. But, you know, I think the other thing is Peter's point about how's it going to be communicated. Well, at the end of the day, it's all about us as board members working with the organisations in our area and the social media or parish magazines with the council, because the council will be putting a comprehensive communication back out. I'm sure there'll be a dedicated section on our website with all the details of how to apply and what to do. And certainly my experience of it before, it worked fairly smoothly with board member grants. And you know, most the organisations the advantage of that is the organisation and others coming to you will then have a discussion with you about it. You are then able to scrutinise that and decide, has that got legs you want to go forward, or does it need a bit more information, or do you need to, and there's an opportunity for you to really work out whether that's actually needed, or does it make any difference in your ward and community. I think that's really important. That's why I said earlier, I think this is really exciting. Rather than it just being another third-party organisation's pet project, which, to be honest, may or may not be something that the community are particularly interested in, but it's certainly something that the people who sit around a different table think was really important. So those two things are not necessarily the same. And I think this means that you will get, people who are, organisations or groups that are active in the community coming to you. And it may even be a parish council, like I actually said, look, we have some support for this, but then that's your opportunity to have that discussion with them about whether their plans are actually, realistic and viable. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grafton Reid.
That's what I was going to say. It's been covered.
Perfect.
But the only final I would say is I don't think we should be fearing having too many applications. The last time there was a struggle to get applications in. I don't believe that we're going to get inundated with loads of £500 applications. We have enough now common sense within the councillors and the community to make this grant system work. I think we need to maintain as much flexibility as we can until we prove that we need to do otherwise.
So I think it's probably best just to take a quick run back on any recommendations or comments that we need to go back. The only thing I think, Sarah, is the recommendation or the comment by Councillor Asher with regards to restricting it to £500 twice. Do we want to send that back to Cabinet as a panel, or do we not? Those in favour of that?
As an advisory, like the average of the average of 5 grants per ward is an advisory. Maybe you put it in as an advisory rather than it being a set rule.
If I may, it is advisory. Maybe it's not quite as clear as that, but I think there's no question that's a compulsory thing. But it just maybe needs the wording tweaking to members in the final thing. But I can assure you that it is not intended to restrict members to just 5 grants if they're appropriate. Obviously, you could just have one. I know some colleagues who just want to support one. So, that's entirely permissible as well.
I mean, do we want to change the wording? I mean, it does say we recommend that each councillor makes a maximum of 5 awards. It doesn't say that's a mandatory requirement in his suggestion.
If you wish to change the wording, I'd suggest change that word to say we would advise.
Which suggests?
Suggest is the
We suggest, we recommend, but I'm not your panel, so it's down to you guys what you want to say.
What do you want to say? Suggest?
I'm in favour of suggest.
Suggest.
Suggest? Yeah, it goes around the table, so we'll pop that back to Cabinet that we change 1.12 to we suggest that each councillor makes a maximum of 5. And we're not going through with the 500, just 2 of it. We're not pushing that back to Cabinet. No?
No.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry, Councillor Russian.
You want to
There, anything else you put up on at all?
Oh, no, I think generally everyone was very supportive of the scheme. So my suggestion in terms of the agreed recommendation would be that it goes back to Cabinet. And the ward member community grant criteria be recommended for approval to Cabinet, subject to an alteration to 1.12. We suggest to Councillor May.
Already happy with that?
Yeah.
All good? Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, members. We'll move on, if I may, to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, which is the hospitality grant. Comes in at a good time, actually, just as Burnham, whatever his name is, chopped their business rates. The recommendations again are Scrutiny has to review the report and the proposed process and criteria for the hospitality grants and provide feedback for consideration by Cabinet again. So I'll hand over to Rachel to run through the report with you. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. The paper in front of you is about the new hospitality grant. This money has been diversified from the budget that was originally allocated to 500,000 to leisure to this hospitality support. The grants will be for capital funds for small businesses, which are businesses that have 1 up to 249 staff for capital projects. And the fund ranges from £5,000 to £25,000. I'm not going to go through all of the criteria. The criteria is then laid out in 3.4 for you on page 21. I'm happy to take any questions on those. As with all grants, any unspent of this grant will be reported back to the leader for decision around alternative grant. The team running this is the economic development team. They have run many grants around the economic development and are pretty good at getting the money out the door. So all being well, we should be able to get this grant through and hopefully get it all spent. Take any questions?
Anybody want to raise anything? Councillor Barrow?
How are you going to publicise it?
Okay, the chair. We have a list of all businesses. So using the business rates, the information we have all the information about medium-sized and small businesses. We will contact them all directly, let them know about the grant. We'll carry on with our usual social media and the usual channels that we do. The economic development team also have a newsletter that goes out to lots of businesses, and we should hope to promote it through there.
Do they have to be businesses that have a premises, or can they be mobile food businesses?
We won't pay for things like vehicles.
No, but
if there was enough,
we come up with some idea.
Yeah, we'll consider the grant. We'll have a look to see what the business is for, and if it meets the criteria. So if it's one person who is out and about providing really valuable services to local business and needs something, whatever that something might be, even just £5,000 for something.
Yeah.
Then it meets what we have in here in criteria, if you're awarded to grant.
Councillor Stock, then Councillor O'Shea.
About the definition of hospitality, and in terms of you mentioned businesses, can you define businesses? Would a charity be able to who run their hospitality, providing coffees and teas?
No, it's a business that would be recognised by paying business rates. So they'll be paying business rates, so they recognise the kind of criteria, they're actually paying business rates within the district. It will cover food, beverages, pubs, cafe, hotels, accommodation and leisure.
Conversely, they can apply for the grant, we just talking about if they were charity.
And the other grant we're talking about shortly.
That's right.
Yeah, ultimately, I think this is a good scheme, across the board. I think, public houses and the likes have been struggling. I think we're very lucky in Market Harbour itself. We've got so many cafes and restaurants and they always seem to be really busy, which is great. I'm not sure about, some of the other areas in Harbour or Lutterworth, maybe they might need this more, for those. One of the other things, when I was on cabinet, it got mentioned quite a lot was shops was struggling, like the little independent shop. Because of the business rate quite high. So I just wondered if there's any plans to help with shops. I know we do sort of a lot of social media and marketing for all the businesses. I think that council are very good at that. But it does worry me that these little shops in the town are going to be struggling and we're going to lose them, and then we're going to end up with empty shops, and that is a real worry for me. I think generally hospitality in Market Harbour very busy, but I think the little shops are struggling, and so I just wondered if there's any way that this could be checked out, if there was anything we could do on rates for shops. Obviously the government have announced that they're going to be helping hospitality. So I wondered if there's anything we could do to help retail.
I will come back to Councillor King.
I can answer.
Yep, sorry, councillor King.
So, thanks for that, Councillor Ashton. So just to pick up, I think just to reiterate what Rachel said earlier, you know, the council, we do have since pandemic, actually, a very good record of, getting business money, supporting businesses across all sectors, where, you know, across the district. So this scheme in particular is aimed at the hospitality sector, which has been struggling for the last couple of years for all sorts of reasons in particular. And just pick up a point though, it isn't going to be applicable to big chains because state aid rules exclude us from doing that. So it is really, you know, really aimed at the smaller, you know, independents or regional players, and as I said, sole traders. There is also a match funding requirement of 25%. So again, I think that's important because, you know, we can only support businesses that are actually viable. If it's not, you know, we don't just hand the money over and then find next week we go bust. So it's got to be something that's viable. So that's why they've also got to be able to invest some of their own money or maybe another source of funding to put in. So that's really important. So I think that's it. In terms of the question you're asking about retail, it's a very difficult question to answer, but I think the problem is a lot of the retailers, the smaller ones, there are business rates exemptions. It's the same with hospitality. There are a number of businesses that won't qualify because they don't pay business rates. And that's it, business like somewhere. And that's the problem. So at the moment, there is no proposal to do that. That's not to say at a future point we can't look at that again, but at the moment we're not proposing to do that because that's not something that we haven't allocated anything in the budget for it. We have to go away and really think and look into that in a lot more detail and depth as to exactly what would we do. We have done a lot of support with retailers in the past. We've had shopfront improvement schemes, we've had environmental grants, we've had you know, innovation grants, we've had all sorts of things, and we have handed out a lot of money to retailers, probably more than any other group actually over the last few years. So that's why we relied on hospitality, because we thought that we can't give them a reduction on the business rates, we can't give them a refund. And what the government has announced today or yesterday, I'm not quite sure when Mr. Burnham did that, but that's not going to come in till maybe next year, and then it's not clear entirely what the offer is going to be. We haven't seen any details of it. So that's kind of almost like jam tomorrow. There's no guarantee it will actually ever happen, despite what the Prime Minister said, because Prime Ministers do say a lot of things and half the time they never happen. So I'm just, you know, this is where we are. So I think this is a good scheme. As you said, I think it will help businesses invest and reinvest in the businesses, keep them competitive. I mean, you know, it's not just about Market Harbour. We've got lots of other hospitality offerings across the whole of the district, you know, and some of them do need to be able to invest in more energy efficient capital, you know, kitchens, or need to refresh their, you know, seating areas or things like that. Or maybe they need new, you know, want to do something with energy efficiency. So I think it encompasses a wide range of things that businesses are probably challenging at the moment that they need to do and to keep them competitive. And as you rightly said, there are a lot of people who come to particularly Market Harbour and some of the other villages to visit them, and it's competitive. And so we need to keep those businesses, you know, attractive to visitors to come here and spend their money. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, please? I can't remember.
Yes.
Councillor James.
Thank you. Yes, I like this in principle, but I just want to try and understand a bit more detail. I'm a great supporter of local businesses right across the district. And I mean local businesses. And I wonder if we could just have a definition, if I can get a definition from the officers of what we mean by local businesses. Because one of the problems we've got, and you see it perhaps more so in this town, perhaps in Lutterworth as well, is as the population grows, the big nationals get more involved. And I won't name them, of course, but we have a number operating in this town now. We've got several coffee shops and other shops, airports and places like that. So the local businesses are under attack by the big national and international companies. And I think one of the things is so good about our district, and there are examples in the town, of course, is that we've got very, very strong independence. So I'm all for supporting those, but I want to try and understand what we mean by local, and also what do we mean by a company that employs up to almost 250 people? Have we got examples of that in this district where we might support things like that? I would be interested to explore that.
Chair, thank you.
So, thank you.
As we noted in the criteria, the company or business, hospitality business, must be based in the Harbour District. And we'll know that with business rates, so we can check that they're paying business rates. We'll also know the size of business, how they're registered as a business, so we can understand the actual numbers. Part of the application process will be then to identify what their employee numbers would be. So we'd get that information actually from them. I think it's pretty clear what beverages, pubs and things are, that we know what they are. But also we will be doing a control assessment at each application to ensure that they do meet that criteria and that they're not a large corporate company trying to apply under the guise of a smaller local company.
Struggling to understand a business of about 250 people. What would we be talking about?
So,
I mean, it won't be pubs, it won't be cafes, unless they're national or international companies.
small pubs in local villages, small village pubs might only have the manager of the pub is the owner, so he's probably not even taking a salary, and might have 4 or 5 people serving and a couple of people behind a bar. So he's going to have quite a small turnover staff. So there are lots of small businesses under 249 member staff.
Could you give me an example in this district?
I can't tell you the exact pub, no. Or
200 plus.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I don't have that information in front of me.
That worries me. That level of business worries me. I don't regard that as a low little competitive. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, yes, okay. Just wanted to comment.
It's 1 to 249 staff. That is the government definition of a micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. That's where the numbers come from. And, you know, if you go and look at the data, which is available in the public domain, you will see the vast majority of businesses in the Harbour District or micro or small businesses. They employ less than 10 people, as Rachel's just outlined. Certainly not going to be supporting big chains, you know, nationals or whatever you just described earlier. They cannot qualify because, you know, state subsidy rules put in, and they cannot be given money in that basis. So this is really aimed, and as already said, they must be paying this. It's quite clear, we've got a lot of experience, knowledge of this, how it works, and the tricks that might be played. I mean, the team are very, very cognizant of all that. So I think this is, you know, I think we're doing as much as we can to make sure that doesn't happen. I think this is going to be quite exciting for the whole hospitality sector across the whole district, because there are businesses out there that do need to invest now to stay competitive, to stay ahead of the curve, so they can continue to be profitable going forward. And without that investment now, they're going to struggle. And that's really, really important.
Councillor Asher, then Councillor Scott.
Yeah, so grants was generally spent within this financial year, 0.3.6. Now, some of the examples given are outdoor dining expansions, investing in all weather outdoor seating area, permanent launches. Now, we know from history that a lot of hospitality places have come into runnings with not getting planning permission. So I am a little bit concerned that if somebody thinks, right, okay, I'll apply for outdoor dining or permanent awning or something, and then they put in the planning permission, that it's probably going to drag on and they may not get planning permission, or they may not get it in time to apply for these grants. So that is a little bit of a concern.
We will talk to the business up front. So the business came to us looking for money and they wanted to put an outside awning in. We would ask them, have they got planning permission? Are they replacing like for like? And if they haven't got planning permission, we would be saying you won't qualify for the grant. So, you know, we will be able to give people that advice when they call and we speak to them, or we'll come to us or speak to us. You know, we won't give people money if they haven't got planning applications.
No, and then that does concern me that they're not going to be able to do what they actually want to do because of the time frame.
It does say within the report, though, that agreement is given by the council to extend the spend period in 3.6. So in those events where people have got to go for planning and it drags on, we could extend the spend period to allow for that to happen.
Yeah, I think there was a place, wasn't there a place in Great Glen? I think it's got like, yeah, they got turned down, which is a shame because I know they're struggling.
It's the balance.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose if they get turned down, then you can't have the money because you can't build it. Thank you, Councillor Scott, then Councillor Grattanbury.
Between both sides of the organisations, obviously cognizant of franchise networks, and a lot of there's a small hotel in Glen that is part of the franchise network. It's franchised up with Great Western. I mean, are you aware? Would those companies as a franchise? They are part of their branding as a large hotel, but would they be counted as a franchise being a smaller one?
If they're branded as a large hotel, then they wouldn't be, if they're not a local business under the criteria of a small, medium-sized business, because they are franchised to a large corporate
So
company.
franchises will be excluded then.
Oh, also, otherwise you like to have McDonald's.
Yeah.
I know, because they're all franchises.
Costa Coffees, all of those could apply.
But some of these franchises are run by Joe Bloggs Limited. That's their name. That's their name. They're using the brand of a large organisation.
I mean, we would consider every grant at its merits when it comes in. I think we can get into detail about specifics. We might not actually receive a grant from them. So as grants, we will look to see whether they meet that criteria.
As a board member, I might go out and talk to somebody, and that's what
Yeah.
I do.
But
So,
speak to us first and we can help with.
yes, I will do.
Fine, you want to come in? Sorry, Councillor Grattanbury, not
No, I was going to ask a similar question about the franchising. We covered that. Again, this has been well thought through. It maintains some flexibility. I really believe that if we're going to have a scheme like this, that we have to have some flexibility in there to use judgment, rather than become too prescriptive. Otherwise, the criteria will become so long that navigate your way through.
Yeah.
So I don't see a reason for any changes to this. I recommend that the cabinet to get this moving as quickly as possible. I will finish on a point. I'd like to see some consideration in the future for similar schemes for other industries or areas of commerce, because there are small manufacturing companies that we would say face similar struggles, and they are being encouraged, particularly in those around about Market Harbour and the area, because they do generate income. Sure. Jobs.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Bannister?
Yeah, just a question about communicating the benefits of this grant system to the businesses, and I think Rachel mentioned that at the register, people paying business rates and so forth, so you know who to target the communications to. Then does that also include the sole trader working from home? For example, I've got a lady in my ward that makes wonderful cakes as her business. And she may want to expand might want to move away from home into a shiny new kitchen or someplace like that, would she be able to be targeted, or do we have to find other means of communicating this grant system to the likes of the sole trader working from home?
Chair. As the first point, paying business rates within Harbour District. So the lady at home paying council tax, but within the production small, that's not business rates. Yeah, it wouldn't apply.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other comments before I go back to Sarah, councillor?
I'm just asking if a brewery would be like the London Brewery, for instance.
That would probably, through check, that would probably,
Beverage.
it would be the food and beverage bit, and we would look at that one in isolation. They will probably have quite a number of employees as well, because a lot of breweries use part-time staff, so that would jack the numbers up, but that would be looked in isolation.
They did have a rural grant, they did have a business rural.
Yeah.
The national group.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Sarah, anything?
No, so what I'm proposing is that the recommendation is that the proposed criteria, process and decision-making framework for the hospitality permit to be recommended for approval by cabinet and be implemented in a very timely way.
Everybody happy with that? 100%, lovely. That's the recommendation. Thank you, everybody. We will move on the agenda to the Local Economic Development and Regeneration Fund. Thank you. We couldn't make that any shorter, could we? The recommendations again for this one is Scrutiny has to review the report and the proposed process and criteria for the said report and provide feedback for consideration by cabinet. So I will again hand over to Rachel, who's going to introduce it. Thank you.
Okay. This report in front of you follows decisions that were from the previous administration where 4 localities in February 2026 were approved to allocate 1.25 million to a local economic development regeneration initiative. It is a mouthful, isn't it? Taken from the business pool rates, and it's noted down that the key localities that were identified then in the close pool including Market Harborough, Lutterworth, Waternasley and Scrutiny. There is a report that is going to be looked at this evening, which is also bringing in a further 250,000 to Kidworth, and that report will be picked up shortly for the department. This grant is actually more of a fund rather than grants. There will be no application process per se. The council will be contacting these 4 individual communities to ask them to submit their applications for a business growth. It needs to have a economic link to it to improve economic growth within regeneration within its community. Alongside that money, they need to ensure there is a business plan. There is also a timeline to deliver. It's a big pot of money. We need assurances that those groups are able to deliver substantially against that project. The report talks about various allocations for each of the groups, whereas Waternasley Parish Council have been identified to improve possible car parking into the leisure centres. Blakeney Parish Council are wanted to move towards their new leisure and sports centre. The Lutterworth Town Council, we're still talking to Lutterworth at the moment. So they've got a number of options on the table, but nothing specific. But they are looking at projects that could increase footfall within the town, but also be benefits to local businesses. That's where we've got to in the conversation with Lutterworth. Again, Market Harborough is still not yet to be decided, and the Kidworth is looking at contributing money to a new scout hut. This is subject to scrutiny tonight and a council decision next week. Within the grant, there is the criteria. I won't go into all the details. But this isn't a grant, it's not an open application process. These organisations we contacted directly once it's approved and will be asked to submit their business cases.
Okay. Councillor Scott.
Through yourself, Councillor Knight, also Chair, can I ask why Great Glen is not on this list, please? It's a major area that needs regeneration, and I feel that it's been missed off. I'm not happy at all happy with this, and some of the other locations haven't got worked up plans. They haven't got worked up out of the rules sort of plans. Basically, just admitted that I think it was Market Harbour. She had to come fully through with one, and lots of work is. I feel it's slightly vague. It's football in the town centre. How would you release football? Do you put buses on? Do you have fairs? Do you have farmers markets? I do feel that we missed out a particular location, particularly in the Glen has a lot of development that is growing up around it, and it's vital that we are regenerated.
I'll take that to Councillor King.
I'm very happy to answer that question. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
So let's just cut to this. So basically, this was the previous administration's scheme, but they went round to talk to different localities, which was like now the letter of forecasting planning in, I believe, January this year. They didn't talk to anywhere else. They just went to those 4 places. And unfortunately, when we came into office, and we said to the chief, well, where's the details on how this is going to work? He said, well, I don't know any. So basically, we've had to spend the last 3 months working out how to administer this process and actually do that. And in the meantime, what I can tell you, although it's not as clear maybe in this, but so in terms of the Market Harbour thing, that originally was supporting the town culture bid for 2028. That bid has fallen only a week and 10 days in a week. So there are a couple of things in the mix-up. I can't really say what they are at the moment, but there are a couple of things that are very advanced and very worked up by different organisations. In terms of lots of work again, as Rachel's pointed out, there are a couple of schemes that the town council, I believe, have been working on and are working up. And again, they haven't given all the details yet, but they certainly have active engagement going on. And they have got a couple of projects which would achieve what the overall objective is, which is local economic regeneration and development. And that will certainly do that. In terms of Port Astley, well, we know there's been discussions about supporting the leisure centre with an extension to its car parking because of the growing demand on that. And the final one is Scrutiny, which again has got expansion of its leisure centre, sports centre facility. And again, that sort of, but all these things, they're not just going to get handed the money willy-nilly. They've got to have proper process. There's going to be proper detailed information. It's got to come through. It's got to be scrutinised. Evaluating due diligence will be done. There will be an agreement between parties now. Peter, you asked me about Great Glen, and there's no easy answer. We have, I'm not sure what the previous administration did in terms of asking, but also we've got a lot of other packages that were put together at the time, which is open space work, the consultation being carried out. That hasn't been, has only just concluded or is about to conclude. So we haven't got the analysis yet of that. So there is 250k still available in that to potentially spread around at some of those locations. There's also the section 106, which was retrieved from being written off, which that's still available, and all of that. But the other thing is, unfortunately, we still haven't got a definitive project that's come forward and said, well, actually, even if we got funding from this, and this, we've got a funding gap, a defined funding gap, and as far as I'm aware, there isn't a defined project that's got actual planning permission. Now, certainly the Kidworth one, I can talk about that. It has got planning consent. There's a fully drawn up plan, there's a fully project plan, everything. It's not total funding. They would have to raise money from elsewhere, but they're advanced on getting that money without going into all the detail. But certainly we'd be willing to look at it again. But we need a definitive project timeline, which we have not got. I think you know better than I do what, when we discussed this privately, I don't really want to go through it all now, but that's what we need. And if whoever it is wants to come to us and approach us and say, well, we've got a project, this is the definitive timeline, this is what we're proposing to do. What we don't want to end up doing is allocating money, because in less than 2 years, we're getting abolished as a council. And so the danger is we have money allocated, and then after a few months after the new council takes over, it says, well, that money's not going to get spent. Nothing's come forward, right, we'll reallocate that for something else. And that is what could happen, seriously. So we don't want to be in a position of promising, funds to organisations and groups, or you can have this money and it's going to help you do X, Y, Z, and then find that can't actually be delivered because post LGR, the end of March 2028, which isn't very long, in the way these things work, and just particularly about Great Glen, anywhere, it can't get delivered, and we're just holding on, or the new council will then be holding on to the money. But after a while, they will start saying, well, this is getting delivered or not. Hang on a minute, because these are big sums of money. And they will say, well, it's not going to get delivered. We're going to take money back and rescind the grant, and we're going to basically put it into something else. And I think that's the real danger. So we have to be very clear about that. So I have been clear with you about it. So I'm not saying we can't. It's just at the minute, there is, we can take this offline, but there isn't a definitive project. Anyone's come to us with a definitive timeline, definitive funding, with any timeline of when it could be delivered. So without getting into the detail of anything, that's what I'm saying.
Chair, I'm not going to get into the detail, but words like worked up and working up with used, that's not fully engaged plan. They working up and working towards things. That's not an out of the draw plan, is it? You're saying some of these locations have still working out what they're doing. So they're not fully fledged plans yet.
But if they don't, if they don't come forward, they won't get the money.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy. You just said it may in the future. I'd be happy if this report actually said they may be considered in the future. Resorted to those without working, I'd be happy with that.
But that's down to the scrutiny committee to decide what you want to say.
Well, that's what I'm putting into the scrutiny. Yes, yes.
But what I'm saying to you is there has to be a realistic offer, a realism of, is there actually something there that in the time frame we've got can come forward and get delivered and start to be delivered? Because if it can't, then reality is, if there's just money sat there in the fund, we don't pay it over, then come the 1st of April 2028, the new authority will say, thanks very much for that, and we'll take it away. That's the real danger with this.
Aware this is the scrutiny committee, it's looking at the whole, thing, so get all about one particular occasion.
Yeah.
Okay. But as I say, I would be, that was, if regular was mentioned, or that if in the future that it will be considered, because some of these applications haven't got fully out of the draw plans. They're not there, are they?
Well, they are.
They are. I can tell you they are.
Well, I didn't say they weren't. I can't tell you exactly, because there hasn't been they haven't actually submitted the full details of what it is that they want the money for until that's submitted and assessed.
Neither is Great Glen.
Yeah, but there's got to be okay. I get what you're saying.
Okay, so we have to bear in mind that, the previous administration formulated it for the 4 areas, and, wanting to add another one, we can send it back to cabinet with a suggestion on there if the panel agrees to say, perhaps, if one doesn't come forward on the 4, perhaps an alternative could be considered to spend the money because it's already allocated, it's earmarked into a budget for this particular grant scheme.
Certainly that would be, not an unreasonable thing to do.
I think because we've got money to spend, if one doesn't come forward, why not find an alternative for that? Which would be
happy with that sort of expensive.
or more than one. Yes. It doesn't have to be all 250. It could be 2 further ones come forward for 125 each.
My area, for instance, trying to get sports facilities going, cricket club needs money.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
And that's, I know the district council is spending a lot of money on Watkins Pavilion, but they should have done that before. Really.
Okay.
I mean, Kibworth has just appeared out of nowhere, hasn't it, really?
Well, yes,
So Great Glen could appear out.
yes and no, really. The problem
I
is,
know we've got planning commission.
no, so just to be very clear, the problem in Kibworth is there's an identified need for a new community facility. There is no section 106 funding for community facilities. So we've now got a need, but there is no money because the money's already been spent on other things over a long period of time. The only money available is for outside sports facilities. This doesn't qualify for that. And the developers won't agree to vary it. So we haven't got, so this is the only kind of,
Can
there
we
isn't,
discuss this when it comes up in the thing, because there's lots of big things.
yeah, so I mean, that's why it's been brought forward. Is there isn't another opportunity to get that necessary project over the line. And it does, as you rightly said, does have full planning, and there is a project plan, and there is a budget, you know, it's all kind of worked up and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Asher?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can we discuss, the Kibworth part when we get to it in the next report? Or do you want us to discuss that now? Because it's,
No, that's fine, because it's subject to agreement in the next report, which is
Because
fine.
it's a difficult one, because obviously we've got the four that were always, coming out of the business rates growth. Just got a bit of a query, though, on the Market Harbour one, I think that was going towards Burford Green. Redevelopment, or is that neither from Burford Green's called office, you know?
Carry on.
That's, was that my understanding?
Sorry.
There were the master plans. There's a number of master plans that are currently being reviewed at the moment, being brought together.
Yeah,
And Burford Green was one of those master plans out of Great Glen, and there was a one. Remember the master plans being done?
yeah, so that's something different.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
thank
just 50
you,
k,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, that's where I remember Burford Green and Great Glen being mentioned, so I'm surprised that they weren't on it, because I'm getting a bit mixed up with them all. So, with regards to Bolton House, I'm quite happy to support that. Blackney, really happy to support that. They've had lots of development as of Bolton House, and I think this is much needed. Lutterworth Town Council to increase football in the town. Brilliant if they can bring something together, that's great. It would be interesting to hear what is going to happen in Market Harbour then, before we pass any agreement on anything. It's a bit up in the air, isn't it? And the 250 kids towards the Scout. I was very surprised to see the Scout mentioned. For that in the next item, if that's okay. Because I am aware of other things in Kibworth that when they've asked for money, so it's quite surprising. But I was expecting to see something else.
Take part of that.
Sure.
The Bolton Astley, Blackney, River to Work and the Market Harbour have already been approved. That went through as a budget.
The money, yeah.
Yeah, so that was what, that's so, no, that's gone.
But
That decision
but
being
what I'm
made.
saying is it'd be good to see the details for the
Yeah.
Market Harbour and what's coming forward, because obviously, and Lutterworth, to be honest, we haven't got full details on that yet.
But the decision tonight is not around about the grant, isn't it? And actually putting the allocation of the grant, what we're arguing to do. The money's already been allocated to those groups. That decision was made at
Yeah.
the council. So what we're saying to the allocation in the, we will be writing to these applications, or these actions are noted here, with them to bring back to us with a business case to spend that money that's been allocated to them.
Yeah, and
So
if they don't come forward with a plan, we can,
We've got plans because Broughton Astley already have, from the conversations I understand that had previously, they want to allocate money to a car park and they have a plan of what they're going to do and how they're going to deliver that car
Yeah.
park. We just haven't seen it. That would be coming to us as a council when this money gets put out. Same as we've talked about Fleckney. Fleckney's got the sports and leisure centre. They've got a fully business case about it's all section 106 money. They're asking for additional money on that business case. So we'll just revisit that business case. So So the projects, as Councillor King is saying, the projects are there. Okay, we haven't seen the business cases, but there are business cases sitting alongside these. We haven't actually contacted these people yet to ask them for their business cases.
So you haven't seen the business cases?
Hang on, everybody, one at a time, please.
If I may, Chair, through you. So let's just be clear. So we got into office in April 20th. There was no process for how these very large sums of money were going to be allocated, not allocated, because already allocated, but how the whatever applications were going to come forward, how they were going to be assessed, how they were then going to agreement was going to be reached, and all of that. So basically, what is outlined in this report is that process under 3.21 of how, and basically it's an invitation only. It's not an open application process, not any organisation. And as Rachel's already outlined, there are several organisations who've already been working up their plans. And this is in order that we can then say to them, this is what you need to do in order so we can actually take the decision to award you the money. This is the process. And unfortunately, that wasn't in place in April. So this has taken since April to work through this and sort all this out, which is regrettable. But that's what we uncovered, and that's where we are. So in terms of the two that I think are a bit, as I said, in Lutterworth, they have got a couple of projects that they're working on. They haven't reached a final decision as to which one they're going to submit, but there's certainly been discussions about those with members of Lutterworth. Market Harbour, once I said, that had been put towards this culture bid for 2028. That's now dropped out. But there are other organisations in the Market Harbour locality that have expressed an interest, and that is they're being evaluated. We have to then go through some evaluation of whether we want to, which ones meet. This is all about economic development regeneration. So that's the criteria. So there are some things there. In terms of the Kidworth, I'm very happy to talk about that. I mentioned it earlier. There's no Section 106 funding available and unlikely to be for some time. There's a need. It's been identified repeatedly in all sorts of policies of the council and need for a new facility. Certainly not just for scouts, it's certainly been available for community usage as well. But that's where we are. So it's, that's why they've approached us. We've spoke to the officers, would this be possible to do that? And that's why we put it into the budget. That's just how it's come about. If other communities want to approach us and say, we've got a project and this we think it would deliver on at this scale, that's fine. But we haven't had anyone actually approach us with a worked up, or even with the level of detail that's needed for it to be brought forward. Because we're not looking for this to be decided next year. We're looking for these decisions to be made this year, quickly, in the next few months. We're looking for getting the money out the door. We're not looking to standing here next year, still waiting for people to decide, and if, as has been mentioned, if these things aren't forthcoming, then obviously we'll have to rethink what happens to the money and whether it gets reallocated somewhere else. But that, at the moment, that's where we are.
So I think, can I just come back to the panel? I think we're going a little bit outside our remit to some degree here. I think we need to be mindful that this money's already been approved by council. This 1.25 billion. Well, something 1 billion has already been approved by council. How it's going to be spent has been approved by council. It's not our job to discuss where the money's going and how it's going to be spent. The recommendation that we are to do is to review the report and the proposed process and criteria for the monies. That's what the recommendation is on page 28. So as the money's already been approved by council, we can't change that. So really we need to be discussing, are we happy with the process and the criteria for the monies? Where it goes, how it goes, and if somebody else wants to come forward because somebody A doesn't spend it and can't provide evidence to have the money, that's something we can put to cabinet and push back to cabinet and say, we think if area A doesn't come forward in a timely manner, to take a phrase from Councillor King, then we as a council, cabinet, can then discuss giving the money to somebody else. If they come forward with something and say, hang on a minute, if they don't want to spend it, we've got this in the pipeline, can we have it instead? So just so we're mindful of where we are, what we're doing tonight, I don't want us going off on big tangents and trying to second guess what's already been approved. In relation to the Kidworths, yes, that's part of our supplies report later, but it is in here as part of this fund. Okay, right, so.
How would you rewrite that you said the process. I've asked for the process to be more expansive and say at a future point. That's a process.
I think it's something we can send back to cabinet to consider, but just let Clive clarify any technical issues with regard to the
I think if we break this down to an aim of it, the panel needs to decide whether it agrees with the criteria that are in this report as it stands now, okay, which is A. Recommendation A.
Yeah.
Recommendation B is that if a designated, whatever you want to call it, area does not come forward in a timely manner, it is open up for other areas to bid and apply. I have an A and a B. The first thing has to be the criteria. Because that criteria will apply to any locality that comes forward.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we've got the £250,000 not been approved on this recommendation. But it shouldn't be on there really, because it's not gone through council, there's no budget for it as it stands. So I'm not happy to say I approve it when we've not got a budget for that and it's coming out of a different pot.
The recommendation of councillor Action through Jack is around the criteria. Okay? The report is written, so you have the full context. Okay, so we try to sort of, if we left one out, it would have been odd. There would have been equal criticism the other way around. So the report was written, so you had the full context. So as remember what I say, point A, recommendation A, you agree the criteria. Recommendation B is if a locality does not come forward in a timely manner, it's opened up for somewhere else. To talk about Kidworth area is in my report later specifically, because that's a request for allocation of an extra 250k.
So we're not approving the allocation of the 250 to the Kidworths. That's nothing to do with us. What we're doing is saying that if the 250,000 for Kidworths is approved in subsequently, the criteria for them to have the money, we're happy with the criteria on the other four. So yes, it's included in the report, but it isn't.
It's there for context.
Yes, it's there for context rather than approval. Right, Councillor Grafton Reid, then Councillor Bannister.
Right.
Thanks.
So, I'm very keen for this to come forward. I'm somewhat frustrated that we haven't had this earlier, but that's the nature of the beast. I was in a meeting today on this very subject. So my first question is, you said here to complete an online application. Is it ready? I have it tomorrow, please.
You can't have it tomorrow, decision needs to be made.
The decision is made.
Yes,
How's it been working?
we are working it up now, so it'll be ready to go. It's not an application as such, we'll be writing to you.
It said here, it
Yes,
says in the text.
Yeah.
Complete an online application form.
yeah, so the question is, yeah,
You invited first.
yeah, you get invited. We'll ask you then to complete the application, which will then have to include a business case and all the stuff that's listed in there. Saying you've got project managers and you're going to manage it and all this sort of stuff you're going to. And then once, yeah, it's all going to be ready to go as soon as we can get them approved.
Are you going to provide templates of business cases?
We can do. Some have business cases already, so we can provide them if you need to.
Right, and do you have examples of previous cases to use as examples?
Oh, yes. I've got a lovely one about rewilding.
We've got many business cases we can share. We can work it up with you. We'll help if it's needed.
No, will officers, would you be available to meet as soon as possible. The decision, I think, is Monday.
Council decision.
Council.
Yes. Would you be available for a meeting at 4 o'clock on Thursday?
Thursday.
Next Thursday?
No, sorry, I'm on holiday.
What, so,
Let me check my diary, I'll come back to you.
could you say, because we already have a meeting scheduled to finish off our application details. That's how far advanced we are. So when we talk about ready to go, we have been desperate.
And what time do you say Thursday?
4.
4 o'clock.
Preferably for an actual cash. We will provide biscuits and tea.
Right.
I'll come to you outside of the meeting.
I think Councillor Bannister wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely no issue with the first process and criteria set out in this report. I would like to move the recommendations A and B as outlined a moment ago by the
Thank you. So does anybody else have anything to say?
I'm sorry, Chair, but I still maintain who can apply that to criteria.
Right, no, let Sarah come back with what I think we'll send back to Cabinet. It is going back to Cabinet, this isn't it? Yes, this is going to Cabinet for them to consider our comments.
So recommendation A would be that the proposed criteria for the local economic development and regeneration fund be recommended for approval by cabinet. And B is that if any of the projects in all previously identified localities doesn't provide the required evidence and in a timely manner, the panel recommends to cabinet that the projects in the localities be considered. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Can I ask for a show of hands that we're all in favour, or those in favour to show, please? Any against? Abstaining. Not abstaining. Okay, so one abstention, but everybody else in favour. Thank you. That was a good discussion. That's obviously winding us up with the next one. Okay, so item 7. Cabinet requested council to agree an increase in resourcing to meet administration priorities. Cabinet requested council to agree with. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Clive to go through the report. Now, there are 7 items on the report for us to consider. What I'd like to do is let Clive do the report, open everything up to discussion, and then we'll go back one at a time to discuss what we're going to say, to feedback. And I'm just checking, we are feeding back to Cabinet already? Yes, there is going back to Cabinet for recommendation onwards to council. So, as long as we're all clear, we're all happy, fine, okay, it's all yours.
Thank you. Right, okay, so, bit of background first. So if you remember that in February, council agreed the budget that included a then position Conservative Group amendment that went forward. Then back in April, the Conservative Group came the administration, and there have been active discussions since then on certain items that they would like as their priorities get loaded in the next few months, because if we get past February next year, it's going to get very interesting because of LGR. Now, so this report goes into quite a bit of detail on these projects, but what I'll do, I'll run you through each one. We won't go through the appendices, that's where the real detail is. I will assume that you've read it, but I will go through what's in section 3 to give you sort of finance. So, open space strategy, paragraph 3.2. This was considered by Cabinet earlier in May and was approved. Unfortunately, it was one of those amendments that was taken out in February. But now Cabinet have reassessed and agreed the strategy. They need to put back in the officer post 66,000, including on costs. So it's effectively reinstating what was taken out in February. 3.3, revenue resource of 10k per annum to recruit a driver. The new mechanical sweeper. So the budget in February included 35,000 for operative. In actual fact, that wasn't enough. It should be 45k, so we need another 10k. So that's what the actual ask here is. Just so members are aware that there was also an ask for an additional rotary, but that has been approved by the VOD process with record of decision. Basically, what has happened is that there was a quote received for a mechanical sweeper that ran out of quote as of yesterday, so the price was jacked up. So back in the previous administration, when the capital programme was produced 2 years ago, there was an application called special projects, and the idea being it's a fully financed fund that money could be wired for specific projects that weren't known when the budget was approved. That makes sense. And the previous administration did use that on a couple of things, but to get so we didn't lose the quote, the money was done by the written record of decision to buy that 140,000 out of that special pot to buy the mechanical sweeper. And we've ordered it. But for this report, the ask is the extra 10. Okay. 3.4. So we have Harbour District Council Services, and I won't go over the history of HDCS Limited. I think you're probably all fully aware of it, but Cabinet have now made a decision to wind up the company as soon as possible. To do the winding up is quite a technical process, both legally and accounting. I'm going to need some resource to do that. So we're asking for a pot of around 60k to be able to do that. The second bit is all to do and linked to the sale of the assets. So as part of the winding up process, the process will be that the assets will be marketed for sale. And we all hope that they will be sold as quickly as possible. Okay? But there is a chance that the sale may take longer than we hope. Now, if that does get elongated, the company will run out of cash, okay? Which is an unfortunate position to be in. So the council, as the sole owner, will have to finance that cash loss. So I'm asking for some money to be put into the budget to finance that. Now, as I said, if the assets are sold, that won't be needed. Okay, because we'll just wind up the company as quickly as we possibly can since the sale's done. It's just in case the assets are not sold. Okay. 3.5. We've just had a very good debate on the LEDR fund. This is asking for an additional £250,000 to finance the Kibworth potential application to make the total pot, not 1 million, but 1.25 million. Okay. 3.6. So over the last year, 18 months, the council, well, actually probably longer than that, probably two years, council has been running an initiative to transfer assets to town and parish councils. The first part of that, in the budget in February, the council approved an allocation of 50,000 for somebody to run that scheme. The scheme is taking longer than what you anticipated. So that contract is coming to an end, so we need to extend it, or I'm just asking for another 50k to do that. However, as part of the discussions with the town and parish councils, but we don't have any legal resource internally to do this. Okay, this is the overview. So I'm asking for an allocation to be able to finance some legal resource to it. Everybody, I think, understands the legal issue we've got here, that we have a head of legal services, but we are full of interims, and they are costing us money. But at the same time, town and parish councils have gone, we'd love some of these assets, but we can't afford the legal costs. They have put their cap out and said, look, we'd like to take on some of these assets. Could you fund the legal costs for us? So based on the experience of the gentleman we've got in doing this piece of work, we at this minute there's probably around 50 parcels of land, 50 registrations of land. That would be different between parcels and registration. There are 2 registrations, 1 parcel of land, if that makes sense, blah, 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 but it's each registration. So based on that, we reckon the total legal cost for about 260. But can I stress that is the worst case scenario? Okay, because as we are applying, as these discussions mature with the town and parish councils, the number of assets they want to take on is actually less than they originally get told. So I'm pretty confident that would be a worst case scenario. Okay. 2.7. So this is the rural grant scheme. So this reflects back to discussions we had a little bit earlier. Now, if you would like to have some more detailed discussions, Rachel can add to this, but in the appendix is quite an extensive commentary on the balance between urban and rural grants that have been allocated. And the administration just felt that the amount of money going to the rural areas was probably big. Well, it's clearly not as much as what it has been to the urban areas. And we've tried to provide some additional balance to that. So a process of around a balance of about £500,000 to go forward. And grants somewhere between 500 and 20,000. Online is the Director of Planning, David Atkinson. He can provide some commentary if you would like some more detail on the Heritage Grant Scheme. The Appendix 7 provides quite a bit of commentary on what heritage assets we have across the district, how we compare to other districts in Leicestershire and even across the East Midlands. And it does actually show that we actually have quite a lot. We have quite more than I actually thought that there was. We have also quite a number of what historically called heritage at risk. Now, the administration said that they'd like to be able to provide some support to support these assets and just keep them alive, really. Everybody knows probably £1 million is a drop in the ocean. We get to that, but this is the most we can probably afford. So there we go. So in a nutshell, they are the 7 projects. The questions, unless Councillor King would like to add anything on top of what I've said already.
No, thanks very much, through you, Chair. I'm quite happy to take any questions that people have.
Thank you. So I'm going to change my mind as chairman, and instead of opening the discussion to all of those 7 items, I think it's probably better if we do one at a time and you comment and then we move on, because otherwise we'll get confused over what we've said.
Absolutely.
So I'm new to this, so Councillor Bankston.
Before we start there, I just want clarification on the missing words in paragraph 3.5. Paragraph 3.5, about 4 lines from the end, it begins, a further 250k allocations requested, given follow the scheme requirements elsewhere on this agenda, and likely 1 million be allocated for Kibworth will be blank, however, the usually. So as it reads, unlikely 1 million be allocated.
Yeah.
Do we have a missing word, some for Kibworth? And I presume the missing word is 250,000 as well.
Yeah.
Can you confirm that that will then read as you intended, Clive?
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, back to
Sorry.
you, Chair.
I'm back to
Right, so,
Yeah, so it should read, a further 250 allocations requested covered for private scheme requirements elsewhere on the student. Unlike the one where the allocated could be funded from reserves.
No, so you just want to
The allocated sum.
Yeah,
get rid of the however.
Yeah.
yeah, get rid of the however. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it, get rid of the however. Allocated will be 250 allocations will be funded from reserves. Yeah, I think that's how it should be.
that's it. Right, so we'll go to 3.1, which is, sorry, 3.2 is the first one.
Yeah.
Which is the open space strategy revenue resource 66,000 for the green and open spaces compliance officer. Does anybody have any comments they wish to make on that? Bearing in mind, just before I come to you, Councillor Asher, that this was pre-scrutinised already by this, perhaps not these members, but the scrutiny committee did pre-scrutinise the open space strategy in February of this year and recommended that Cabinet should consider additional support for parish councils, resident groups to manage open spaces. So it would appear that this committee's already looked at this and approved it, but now the Cabinet's trying to put it back in. So, right, Councillor Ashley, you have some comments.
Yes, I am glad to see this back in, because obviously something that the coalition put in the original budget is taken by the Conservatives. The only question I have got is, I couldn't see in there the contract, whether this would be a permanent member of staff. With the council actually going, are they going to be put on like a year's contract or? That's
Clive was saying he thinks it's a permanent
is
position.
that the right thing to do though, with us actually, we won't be here in.
Not going to change anyway.
Doesn't matter. But let me explain something. So if somebody has a 2-year contract, okay, they stay 2 years and 1 day, they get full blood rights anyway. So the work is needed for at least 2 years. So they effectively they're going to be permanent.
But then I assume, by name, Clive, they would then be considered as when this authority ceasing to exist, the new authority takes over. It'd be a case of applying for your own job, presumably.
Well,
However it's going to operate. Two people will apply.
Yeah, 2 people will apply for all the stuff.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm happy to see that back in, as I say, yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Anything we want to feedback to Cabinet on that, other than we agree? Okay. Lovely, thank you. 2.3 then, so we've got a mechanical road sweeper, it probably would be a good idea to pay someone to drive it, as it sits out and gathers dust. So, we're just asking for an extra, or the Cabinet's asking for an extra 10,000 to fund that position. Does anybody have any comments or any questions?
Yeah, just.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, so we're, the new mechanical sweeper will be part of the new contract presumably, so this will eventually roll itself into a new contract. As far as the vehicle is concerned, and as far as the driver is concerned, presumably that will somewhere will work out in the new contract as well.
Future.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Happy with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. 3.4 is the revenue resourcing totaling 179,000 over 3 years to finance the voluntary wind up of Harbour District Council. District Services, or sorry, District Council Services Limited. Yes,
Give it another year or so, it will be wound up.
So, yeah, anybody, any comments about, happy with that?
Yeah.
Cool, Councillor Jones?
Could I just make a comment on that? What's it doing? This is aiding cash flow, is it, for this company while we carry on from? And isn't there a clever way, if this company is in so much trouble, can we not make it dormant, freeze it in a situation? That would probably require setting up another company, but maybe under a much better trading arrangement. If I could ask, Yes, you are.
Well.
I make it do.
Yeah. Setting up the company's going to cost not a lot, £100, but then I'm going to manage that one as well. So I'm doing, effectively doing the same thing. So you just need to wind this up. Please buy it. Please buy the assets. That's the issue. It is literally, we need to get it sold as quickly as possible. That will save money in the budget as well, which I'll be happy about. But yeah.
Okay, Chairman, could I just understand what the assets are? The flats and the shop?
Yeah, so there are two assets through your check. Sorry, there are two assets. There is the Tesco's in the market, central market harbour there, which have the flats above. And there is now the Sports Direct, which is on the Commons Camp. There are two assets.
So, Chairman, we have an income then from the shops, and we have an income from the flats, presumably.
Right. Okay. So,
and that's not covering the.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, through your check. So, there was a push a couple of years ago to close the company down quickly. At that time, the Tesco's lease had come up for renewal, and I refused to allow any talk about winding up because it was virtually worthless at that point in time because the lease had come to an end and I needed to get value back into the business. So I had to hold on, not allow stuff to happen really. I encouraged people not to make decisions so we could. And it took Tesco's a long time to agree the new lease. Okay? And then, shortly afterwards, Poundland vacated. So I was back at the same dilemma. And that asset's gone through the floor as well. So, but luckily, got Sports Direct in. Now, the Tesco's lease is at less value what the original lease was, but it was completely market tested and it was the best value we could get out of that lease. Sports Direct lease has effectively a year's free rent. Okay, that's the best we could get. Okay, but they were in. That is what is causing a bit of a dip in the profitability at this point in time. Okay, that will feed through, and then there will be recovery thereafter. But the other thing to think about, us running commercial property is not our bailiwick. It is not what we are here for. It was something from years ago that the government did encourage local authorities to do, but it is not our core business. And we are at a bit of an inception point that Belgium on the horizon. We've got them to the best value that we possibly can. Let's get the capital receipt as quickly as we possibly can. So let's close the business down. That's in the pot, in a very, very summarised version.
So we can't declare bankruptcy then?
No.
That wouldn't work.
But why would you declare this company bankrupt? We are the sole holder of it. We have the funds to pay the liquidity. And do you really want that? Reputationally, that would be terrible for the council.
Thank you, Chair, if I may, I'm fully supportive of this. I think for every reason that's been given so far, it's a not to exceed objective here. We really do need to get this done.
Yeah,
as quickly as possible, humanly possible, while there is a market. Market may change.
Thank you. Okay, no comments? No, so move on, right, okay, 3.5, so this is the local economic development regeneration fund, the resource of 250k for Kibwin. I'll open up discussion. Councillor Asher.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think when this came on the budget for council, a lot of people were quite surprised and wondered what it was all about because we just saw the 250k for Kibble Ward. And obviously the leader and the deputy leader are Kibbleford members, so it was a bit of a surprise to people to say, what do they want this for? We've got a bit more meat on the bones now, with it being potentially for help with the scout club. The things to mention about that. Hasn't Kibbleford already got a scout club? Hasn't a lot of money been spent on the scout club through 106 money? And also, I know the Kibbleford Community Hub wanted to do some improvements to the hub from Kibbleford Beach and Prairie Council, and I visited them when I was on cabinet. So I'm just wondering why this has appeared and why it's coming from reserves and not from another fund. I obviously don't agree with it. I don't think it should be coming out of reserves. I think if there's any money left over, that should be put out to older areas and offered out. There's other areas that may benefit, like Great Glen, Anderswood. So I don't agree with this. I don't think it should be in the budget. As I say, there's questions that I've got that I just wondered where it has all suddenly gone.
That's okay.
So, well, thanks for that, Councillor Asher. So that's a bit like when the previous leader went out there, went round Lutterworth, brought Astley, Fleckney and Market Harbour without bothering to ask anyone else if they wanted. They could have gone to Kibworth, offer them money, go to Great Glen, he could go to Thurnby. He didn't. He didn't do any of that. He never bothered to ask us what we wanted. So, or what anyone else wanted. So I can, you can't have it both ways. What's good for one's got to be good for another. So I'm going to, not going to take that. What I would say about this, to be very clear, you mentioned a couple of things there. Yeah, there is a community hub in Kibworth. I'll declare an interest with the 100 metres from my house. But what I would also say is, despite multiple requests for further information about further funding phases, no information has ever been forthcoming, no revised business case, no business plan, nothing. So we can't support organisations, as I said earlier, that won't come forward with detailed information and share plans about what they do or don't do. So it is a bit of a vacuum situation. As I mentioned earlier, there is an existing HUD in the locality. I know about that because some years ago I used to be the chairman of the committee that runs that. It's a money pit, and it's actually jointly owned by two organisations, but it's actually, the point about it is it's not big enough. Because of all the housing expansion we've had in the locality over the last decade, there are hundreds of kids that go to these groups every week. There is not enough space, and the community facilities that we have in the locality are not suitable or are too expensive for those groups to rent are in the marketplace. And so at the moment, there are massive waiting lists of children, young people waiting to take part in these groups. And obviously, as we all know, having young people take part in diversionary youth activities with uniform youth organisations. One example is these, Scout and Guides, is a great thing because it actually gives those kids and young people values for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, there just isn't enough space at existing facilities to do that. As I mentioned earlier, there have been numerous attempts to find land and everything else. So this is why we got approached and we put it forward. Now, if the council wants to say no on Monday night, say no to the fact that would be extremely disappointing because we're then denying an opportunity, and it would be a tremendous regeneration thing. Because how is this group going to, meet the needs of all the young people that are out there? Now, I appreciate there are other areas in the locality, but as I said earlier, and this was first gone around, the leader went round, meeting with all these different localities, never came to us and said, have you got any ideas, any suggestions? It was the wish list of the coalition that he was going round to, for whatever reason. I don't know why he went to those places, but he did. We were never asked, we were never consulted. We were just told, this is happening, that's it. and you voted it through. So that's, I'm just replaying what happened. So I think that's where it is. We've had a discussion earlier, which was clearly quite helpful. I think if there is money that, for whatever reason, when the ones that have been invited previously, and if this is agreed to, they don't then deliver in a timely fashion, then yeah, I think that money should be then offered, or there should be opportunities for other areas or localities that are identified as having a project that could be delivered. But we're not at that point at the moment. So I think that's where I am, Chair. But I do feel quite strongly about this, that previously we were never asked, no clarity was ever given about what the purpose of this was. The first we heard about it was when secret discussions were being held with communities or with parish councils, and for whatever reason. And I think if that had been an open process at the beginning about what the purpose of this was, then we could have identified suitable localities, and we could have identified whether actually more money was needed and was originally put into the original budget back in February, and we wouldn't be having this discussion now. But we are where we are. Can't change what's being done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor James, and then Clive wants to drop in, so after you.
Oh, sorry,
No, after you.
I just want to say that, from some of my civic duties, I'm well aware there's a very strong scouting movement in Kidworth. In fact, there's very strong scouting movement right across the district. They are short of good accommodation, and I think this is a good asset, and I support it, Chair.
Thank you. Clive, you wanted to come through?
Yeah, through Chair Councillor Ash's questions around how it's funded, so on, and the answer to that is the £1 million is funded from the business rates growth fund that we have been receiving over the last few years. So, a bit of background: all the businesses paid into what was the LEP, and after the demand from the LEP, the growth money then was held centrally, and that is distributed back to those constituent authorities. So the 1.7 million that is made up of the 1 million plus the 250,000 for the Gateway 1 review that will be happening later this year. And then there's some allocations to economic development for some activities and a bit towards SIL. So on that growth money, there isn't the additional 250,000 worth, okay? And there wouldn't be for any other scheme locality to come forward. So that would have to be funded from reserves. And that's where all these have been.
Can I come back on some of the points that Councillor King made, if that's okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, now, obviously, I don't know what the leader did, but I do know that he went round to a lot of the parish councils, and I think Great Glen was one of them, with the chief exec at the time. I don't know why decisions were made for these four areas, if I'm being completely brutally honest. But it was coming out of the fund that Clive said, and I think we were all behind that. But to come out of reserves, when in the budget amendments, you actually said about keeping reserves, and what if LGR is delayed, and et cetera, et cetera. I just cannot see what's changed since then. And to say that there's lots of places without that Kidworth is, lacking provision for scout books, the other ones smaller. I get that, but we've got the sea cadets in Harbour homes. We've got, I'm sure if you ask any area, they've not got enough space for the scouts or for sea cadets or for army cadets. There's always going to be something. And where does it end then? Where do we keep putting in 250,000 out of reserves? Everybody's going to want their own bit. Councillor Scott said he likes something for Great Glen. It just feels a little bit unfair. That's what I'm saying.
Councillor Grafton,
in this family was for me, it's the fact that we can afford to take this from reserves. I believe is the case. I believe it can be in. Looking for a document.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The opportunity to have that fund expanded so that more groups can benefit, grassroots organisations can benefit from the fund, I think is to be promoted and supported. How we got there, I really don't care. I do care that groups have the opportunity to bid into the funding. And I do support Councillor Scott's previous comments about if the groups that are on the original shortlist, including this one, don't bring forward an application in time with sufficient clarity, that it be offered out to other groups. So with that amendment, that I think we already agree.
Yeah.
I fully support this, and we do need to get on. We have a healthy set of reserves. And I think our residents will be appalled if we move into LGR and those reserves spirit away into areas which haven't contributed. That's how they will see it.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or not, it's not the point. It's have we done the best for our residents in the time which we need to do that with some urgency.
Thank you. Councillor King, you wanted to come back?
Well,
I'm not going to allow Tim to tap back and forwards.
I'm just
Last
going
comment.
to Councillor Grafton's point about reserves, and I think what's useful is if we just recap about how those reserves have been amassed over the last few years. So there were three things that happened. So first of all, we were very careful when we were in administration and husbanding, and we did have a number of surpluses in some years. I was criticised for that, but we did put the surplus and bank it away for the inevitable rainy day. And then what we had was a succession of three things that happened. So we had two very large business rates operating approximately 10 million due to the business rate, because of the economic growth that's taken part in the district, mainly driven by the increase in business units at Magna Park. And the second thing we had is we had a plot of land, which the colleagues have been on the council a long time, although that we actually were very successful in selling in Lutterworth for a more affordable housing scheme for just short of £5 million. So approximately 14.5 to 15 million quid of what's in our reserves came from those three things. So it came from economic growth, housing growth in the district, and therefore, taking your point, it's absolutely appropriate that we reinvest some of those funds into our district, but we can't just say, oh, everyone have that money. We have to go through a process, and this is what this is about. Now, we've already said that if other groups, areas come forward and say, actually, we've got a viable, deliverable scheme within the timeline that we've got left, that's the crucial wording, the timeline we have left, picking up your point, because do we want to hand, I mean, at a certain point, the structural change order will kick in, the section, very notice, we won't be able to make these sorts of decisions. So we have got to move pretty quickly, and if we just keep delaying it, parking it off and all the rest of it, will not be delivered. And then those organisations, whatever